So living in Western North Carolina, I'm sure you're all familiar with the rivers and different activities involving the river. Lots of fishing and kayaking and swimming in our rivers and hiking and stuff. And I'm sure most of you have eaten seafood at some point in your life. And it typically comes from a fish farm, which is what I'm wanting to talk about today. So my main 3 points are fish farms and pollution that they're bringing to our environment and killing off of other species, and the fish raised in hatcheries and how they're not the same as wild fish. And my third point is how hatchery raised fish are incapable of living a long, full lifespan and their lack of reproductive fitness. I'm not trying to turn anyone away from eating seafood or changing your opinion on fish, just informing you about the lives that they take and their impact on our environment. So my first point is fish farms. And basically what most fish farms are, they are open net cages, which are just cages that are out sat in the ocean or in a bay area, and the fish cannot get out of the cages, but the water that they are in can go out into the ocean. So what this causes is the waste from these fish, the chemicals, their food, leftovers and whatnot, are flowing into the ocean and contaminating beaches, especially clam beaches, and also affecting wild fish populations. Along with that, these fish farms, they have parasites, because there's a ton of fish living in small, cramped conditions, so the parasites that are on these fish as well are getting contaminated into the wild fish, which is not a big deal, but when there's a ton of parasites and they're going out into the wild, it can kill off wild fish. Also, along with the fish farms, they're causing marine mammals, especially those on the extinction lists, like the sea lions and the California seals. They're causing them to become even more extinct because the fish farmers are having to shoot them because the mammals are coming into the areas where the fish farms are, which obviously that makes sense because it's an easy meal for those animals. They're coming to an easy meal and they're destroying the farmers' cages and they're eating the fish, which, I mean, you can't blame the farmers, they're just trying to make a living, but they're taking it into their own hands and they're killing off the sea lions and seals, which wouldn't be a big deal, but both of these animals are on extinction lists. And in 2011, 141 California sea lions were shot by fish farmers and 37 harbor seals were shot, which is a big deal for animals that are on extinction lists. My second point is on fish hatcheries. And basically what a fish hatchery is, if you haven't seen one, we have several here in Western North Carolina. A fish hatchery is just rows of concrete tanks where these fish are raised from the time they hatch to full adulthood. And that's not really a problem. The issue comes with how they're fed. They are fed on top of the water little pelleted foods, which causes the fish to rise to the surface, which is causing them to have lack of fear of predators when they're released into the wild. Also, just being kept in these cramped conditions and being kept in man-made cages and whatnot, they have no fear of predators. So this causes the fish to be killed off. So once they're released into the wild, if they make it out into the wild, they're usually killed off by predators because they're rising to the surface to eat, and the birds and stuff are killing them. Also, the ones that do survive, they are typically stronger and more aggressive. You can ask anyone that fishes in the rivers around here the difference between a wild fish and a hatchery-raised fish. The wild fish are typically much smaller than the hatchery-raised fish, and this is just because they're fed pelleted food and they are raised by humans, so they're going to be stronger. And what this causes is once they're released, they are out-competing the wild fish for food, and they're out-competing for habitats, and this is causing the wild fish to be killed off. My third point is their long-term survival. These hatchery-raised fish, they're not able to survive long-terms or a full lifespan just based off of what I said earlier on how they have no natural skills. They also weaken the gene pools when interbreeding and reproducing with the wild fish. Less than 5% of hatchery fish make it to full adulthood. This is because they lack genetic adaptations such as being able to conserve energy and being able to go long periods of time without eating, like the wild fish can do. Also, these fish, they're not returning to spawning grounds. This is specifically salmon. They're not returning back, like they go out into the ocean to live their adult livelihood, but then they don't return back to the rivers to reproduce, and this is causing new fish to not be reproduced, obviously. A study was done, and 2 hatchery-raised fish were bred together, and they only had a 37% reproductive fitness, which that's coming out of 100% out of wild fish, or close to 100%. And then when a hatchery-raised fish and a wild fish were bred together, this statistic jumped up to 87%, which is a huge difference, and that is showing that the hatchery-raised fish are lower in their reproductive fitness than the wild fish. So basically my point is not trying to turn people away from fishing or turn people away from outdoor hobbies involving the rivers and streams. I'm just trying to inform people that these fish, they are different. They're not the same fish as the ones in the wild, and they're killing off our wild fish. And basically, this is causing our environment to be completely reliant on hatcheries, and also just the fish farms and how they are negatively affecting our oceans and streams around them, and how they're killing off wild species. Thank you for listening.